Well, interesting conversations there coming from my colleagues Samgele Masego and Mzandile Mbete. We're actually laughing when Usamgele was trying to put Ivan Meyer into a corner talking about coalitions. And Dr. Ndlovu, let me take this conversation to you, especially about talking about coalitions. We heard John Steenhuisen there talking about the opposition moonlight pact with various other political parties other than the ANC and the EFF. Please elaborate for us.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, picking the conversation where we left at in our previous speech about, the numbers on the ground. And I think what was coming from the floor, especially from Zwandile, is very interesting in terms of, talking about numbers, but also how the language was very explicit when it comes to the EFF, but not necessarily coming for the ANC directly. And in terms of what does that mean, for us, and knowing in terms of the voters that we're appealing for, from the DA side. So they're looking at, the speeches, yesterday's speech and the two speeches today are very, particular and are very outright about who are we looking for as a part of our constituency, but also not compromising our values and everything. We've already had that conversation. But the interesting narrative that is coming here around, the EFF, but not necessarily the ANC, but we want to unseat the ANC. So here it suggests that there is a pool of, voters here that the DA might be targeting that are not necessarily, that are ANC voters, but not necessarily, the broader ANC voters, but, the group that does support the policies, some of the policies and some of, the leadership of the current sitting president, within the ANC, because I think from what we have observed, he's got a particular ideology that, when not scrutinized closely, it aligns with some of the liberal attitude from the DA. So that is very important for us, I think as Mzandile says it, to say, if then it doesn't happen, not the EFF, but and then there will be, an alignment with the ANC, but not necessarily the ANC, but a particular personality within the ANC, and I think that is the biggest takeaway from that speech.
Dr. Ranesh, we're still waiting for those results, but in a tweet, my colleague Samgele Masego had tweeted that John Steenhuisen had won by 84%. Quite a landslide victory for him.
Yeah, and I think that landslide was predicted. I expected a little more, so 84 is a bit too low from where I'm sitting. I somehow expected for him to be in the upper 90s. If you look back, 2020, he won that election 80% to Mbali into at least 20%. In 2015, Musi Maimane beat Dr. Wilmot James, 89%, close to 90%. Musi Maimane won that election. And then in 2007, Helen Zille won that election against Athol Trollop and Joe Seremane and Tate Joe Seremane by 72%. So the numbers are still coming, but I think as a consolation to the media as well, when Musi Maimane's election result was announced, it was not immediate. They just did what they did like they did today. They had a name in an envelope. They, at that time, by the way, it was Helen Zille who took the envelope, the name out of the envelope and presented it to Congress. So, and then later on, those results were released to the media, and then there was a media briefing after that. So I think those results we will get, but I think it'll maybe in the next hour or so, we should hear something. Yeah.
We focused on John Steenhuisen being re-elected. Let us also look at the other positions as well. I mean, Helen Zille coming back as Federal Council Chair, no surprises there. Yeah. The likes of Ivan Meyer as well. But it's quite interesting when Solly Malaitsi went on stage. He was elected as a deputy, the second deputy Federal Chair. A huge round of applause for him, as well as JP Smith.
I think especially in the case of Solly Malaitsi, you heard the loud cheers. I think he has a very bright future within the DA. I think maybe that's the sign, the early signs that of all the recent black leaders leaving the party in the past couple of years, maybe this is someone new that we can focus our eyes on. We can, elevate him to, higher positions within the party. He has been within the structures of the party. He was spokesperson of the party as well. So I think that support is very telling. It is extremely very telling. He's well spoken as well. well. He's very articulate. We've also got Siviwe Garube. She's been elevated to chief whip within the party, serving under John Steenhuisen in the National Assembly, taking his old position as well. So Solly Malatsi, and then obviously JP Smith, he is within the Cape Town City Council. He is an MMC. I forget the actual title. I think it's Safety and Transport,
Yes.
something like that. So he has a very bright future as well, very young person. But if you'd recall, he's infamously known for having clashed with Patricia de Lille, and he was caught up in that entire saga with de Lille, when eventually she did leave the party back in 2018. So I think the DA is kind of valuing these young leaders, encouraging them, compared to the older leaders who went on stage. So I think that's a very positive sign for the party. Maybe the party is going in a certain direction, giving young leaders and younger leaders that chance just to, elevate themselves, to the higher echelons of party leadership.
And it's quite surprising that Natasha Mazzoni did not bag even one position here.
Yeah, I think that was no surprise as well. And we had Natasha Mazzoni on SABC TV platforms yesterday. And I think after the interview, she did reveal something very personal to SABC journalists who was present here. So I think maybe delegates kind of identified with that. They empathized because she had a family crisis. So maybe they wanted to give her that space because there was a lot of talk, especially in the media, saying that she was demoted as chief whip. But she disputed that because she says, it demanded too much of my time. And, during this very trying time in my personal life, I had to step back. And she spoke to John Steenhuisen as leader of the DA, and he understood where she was coming from. So I think maybe a bit of a disappointment to her, but I think she will value that space, that personal space more, to process what happened in the last couple of years to her and her family more. Yeah.
Dr. Tengiwe, throwing this conversation forward, 2024 is just around the corner, and it seems as if the DA has set its eyes on the union buildings. They seem quite confident that, listen, next year the ANC will fall below 50%, and potentially John Steenhuisen could be the next presidential candidate of this country.
Well, I want to pick up the conversation from the conversation that you were having around Solly Malatsi, and I want to bring in the question of representation here. That is very key in terms of identity representation, especially looking at the narrative against non-racial politics, non-racial party, and all of that. And I think when he stood to go up to the stage, and then there was that, applaud from. So there are a whole lot of issues, his leadership and everything that has already been covered by my colleague, but also identity politics matters here. And a lot, and especially to the conversation that you're talking about, to say they are headed to the union buildings. Who are they going with? Thinking about John Steenhuisen being the possible next candidate, presidential candidate, there is a lot of work on the ground to be done. I think that cannot be disputed. Yesterday we had conversations around, do we think the time that they spent here is enough to have debated some of the policies and everything that needs to be done? But I guess other conversations are already happening outside, but I think we saw, when they were talking about them already, positioning themselves and having started the work for mobilization. But I would say the work is very important, and it starts with, bringing together POS followers and Steenhuisen's followers in one, and then deploying them again to the ground. But also something that was very interesting from the speech was how Steenhuisen positioned himself as a leader coming to mop up and to clean up, the party that was in tatters. And in terms of what does that mean, in terms of him coming in and also reasserting the identity and the political ideology of the DNA. So in terms of what does that mean? So it becomes very important.
Well, to our viewers, thank you so much for making SABC News your news channel of choice. We do apologize for that technical error. But of course, Unathi, it's been an absolute pleasure bringing you this 2-day conference of the Democratic Alliance here from the Gallagher Convention Center. You've seen there John Steenhuisen coming back as the leader of the Democratic Alliance. To my awesome colleagues, Criselda Lewis, Mzwandile Mbeche, the good doctors here in studio, Samgele Masego, Busi Chimombe, Kenny Mapanga. I can't name you all. Thank you so, so much. And of course, to our awesome viewers, thank you so much for making SABC News your news channel of choice. To the guys behind the cameras, thank you so much. My directors, Thabo Mputing, PK, thank you to everybody. With that said, it is a wrap for the SABC News team, all the way from Gallagher Convention Center in the heart of Midrand. And we toss back to you in studio, Nati.
Thank you so much, Natasha. And of course, Natasha, thanking all the SABC colleagues who have been on the ground working tirelessly there to give us that analysis. Just to recap, of course, the DA has officially announced its new leaders following its elective conference this weekend in Midrand, Johannesburg. John Steenhuisen has been re-elected as DA leader, giving him a second term at the helm. He's defeated Mpho Phalatse, former mayor of Johannesburg. Now, in terms of how much he has won by, those numbers are still coming in, but we do understand it could be around 84%, but we'll certainly give you more information later on. But Steenhuisen will lead the DA for the next 3 years and also play a pivotal role in taking the party to the 2024 general elections.